Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Western adventure on this Saturday, Fort Laramie starring Raymond Burr. From Sunday, May 20th, 1956, 67 years ago, gold. And we thank you for tuning in on this Saturday, 20th day of May, 140th day of the year, 255 days remaining until we get to 2024. In 1862, President Lincoln signed the Homestead Act into law. 1873, Levi Strauss and Jacob Davis received a patent for blue jeans with copper rivets. The first public display on this date in 1891 of Thomas Alva Edison's prototype kinetoscope, shown at Edison's laboratory for a convention of the National Federation of Women's Clubs. 1902, Cuba gained independence from the U.S., and in 1916, the Saturday Evening Post published its first cover with a Norman Rockwell painting, Boy with Baby Carriage. In 1916, the small town of Codell, Kansas, struck by a tornado. Incredibly, same town also hit in 1917 and 1918 on the exact same dates. 3 tornadoes striking the same small town 3 consecutive years. At 7:52 on this date in 1927, Charles Lindbergh took off from Roosevelt Field in Long Island, New York, on the world's first nonstop flight across the Atlantic Ocean, touching down at Le Bourget Field in Paris at, 10:22 the next day.
Aviation has not gripped the imagination of the world solely because man at last found a way of flying. Its fascination lies far more in the changes it is bringing about in existing methods and policies. Possibly the most important effect will be on international relations. When measured in hours of flying time, the great distances of the old world no longer exist.
A radio address from Lindbergh from August of 1930 in which he called for global uniform air regulations. 1932, Amelia Earhart took off from Newfoundland to begin the world's first non-stop flight across the Atlantic Ocean by a female pilot, landing in Ireland the next day.
Flying is perhaps the most dramatic of recent scientific attainments. In the brief span of 30-odd years, the world has seen an inventor's dream, first materialized by the Wright brothers at Kitty Hawk, become an everyday actuality. Perhaps I'm prejudiced, but to me it seems that no other phase of modern progress contrives to maintain such a brimming measure of romance and beauty coupled with utility as does aviation.
Earhart would be lost in 1937 after an attempt to circle the globe, last seen over Howland Island in the Pacific. 1940, the first prisoners arrived at a new concentration camp, Auschwitz. In the U.S. on this date in 1949, the Armed Forces Security Agency, predecessor to the National Security Agency, was established. 1954, Chiang Kai-shek selected for another term as president of the Republic of China by the National Assembly. 1972, President Nixon and Henry Kissinger departed Washington to meet with Soviet officials.
We do expect to make some progress, and the progress that we make, we trust, will lay the foundation for more progress in the future, in which 2 great peoples, the Russian people and the American people, can find a way, despite philosophical differences that are very deep, despite competitive positions in the world that are quite different, can find ways to live in peace in the world.
Nixon would become the first president to visit Moscow and only second to ever visit the Soviet Union. First publication on this date in 1983 of the discovery of the virus that causes AIDS in the journal Science by Luc Montier and Robert Gallo individually. It was on this date in 2006, Barry Bonds tied a long-standing record.
Here's the 1-1 pitch to Bonds. Swung on, driven, deep right
center field. Way back, no doubt, and Barry Bonds has hit number 714. He tied the Babe, and there was no doubt about it.
Homer number 714 for Bonds, who would a year and a half later make it to 762 homers. That's a record that still stands today. Passing away on this date in history, Pope John the 22nd, also Christopher Columbus, Randy Savage, oh yeah, Robin Gibb of the Bee Gees, and Gilda Radner.
I like to make people laugh a lot, but I like to laugh even more. Is this cheddar cheese?
No, that's Chevy Chase.
What?
Chevy Chase.
Oh, well, I must have the wrong number.
Yes.
Never mind.
When I look at that tape, I can't help but think how great she was and how young I looked. Gilda, we miss you.
Gilda talking about her love of laughter, one of her famous sketches, and Steve Martin paying tribute to the late Gilda Radner, who passed away on this date in 1989. Born on this date in history, First Lady Dolly Madison, the co-founder of Wells Fargo, William Fargo, James Stewart. Oh, we miss him so much. He was such a delight. Moshe Dayan, the Israeli general, comedian George Gobel, and there you are. From Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, David Hedison, and Jack Kevorkian, the controversial doctor, and Joe Cocker. Turning 87 today, from the Omega Man and License to Kill, Anthony Zerbe, 87. Cher, do you believe? Yes, Cher is 77 today. Doug McKenzie. And from SCTV, Dave Thomas, 74. The Go-Go's, Jane Whelan, who actually played a part in Star Trek The Voyage Home in 1986. Jane Whelan, 65. Balki Barcolomos from Perfect Strangers, Bronson Pinchot, Don't Be Ridiculous, 64 today. From Star Trek Enterprise, John Billingsley, 63. From Scandal, the grandson of Samuel Goldwyn, Tony Goldwyn, 63. From The Facts of Life, Natalie, Mindy Cohen, 57. From Deadwood and Justified, Timothy Oliphant, 55. A great, from, Road Dogg, B.G. James. From that famous Armstrong family, Brian James, 54 today. Tony Stewart, retired NASCAR racer, 52. Busta Rhymes, 51. From Gilmore Girls, The Good Wife and the Resident, Matt Shurshi is 46. This Is My Fight Song, Rachel Platten, 42. Country singer Joe Party is 38. And Joffrey Barthon in Game of Thrones, Jack Gleason, 31. Those just a few of the people celebrating the 20th day of May as their birthday. If this is your birthday.
Hi, we're the Four Freshmen, and we just want to say, Happy birthday to you.
From 67 years ago, May 20th, 1956, Raymond Burr, Fort Laramie, on this Saturday, Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thanks for tuning in on this Saturday edition of Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now, from 67 years ago, May 20th, 1956, Raymond Burr in Fort Laramie.
At the gallop, ho!
Fort Laramie. Fort Laramie, starring Raymond Burr as Captain Lee Quince. Specially transcribed tales of the dark and tragic ground of the wild frontier, the saga of fighting men who rode the rim of empire, and the dramatic story of Lee Quince, Captain of Cavalry.
This is as far as we go, mister.
That's your line, the creek ahead?
You can water your stock there. We'll wait for that and head back.
Fair enough. Whoa now! Whoa! Whoa! Slow it down back there. We're stopping a spell.
This the end of the line for us, Captain?
That's what the orders say, Sergeant.
Yes, sir.
Tell the men to dismount and unsaddle, pin graze and water.
Take your mount, Captain.
Yeah, thanks. I want to talk to the driver.
You seen him then, up on the rim?
Yeah, they're keeping their distance.
Ain't every wagon train pushing west gets 2 escorts, cavalry and the engines.
Yeah, of course. I'll tell him.
Dismount and unsaddle, pin graze and water. Dismount and unsaddle, pin graze and water. Come on now. Get moving there.
Mind your stock don't take on water too fast.
You're planning to stick to the Oregon Trail, driver?
I'd be a plain fool if I didn't. With them engines staring me down from the top of the canyon.
I don't think they'll bother you. They're not hungry. We butchered some beef on the agency for them last week.
Can't see we'd look too good to them. Kind of mangy-looking outfit, ain't we?
Oh, I've seen worse. You're all right, so long as you don't get any ideas about the old Bozeman Trail.
Well, that's closed now, ain't it?
Yeah, by treaty. That's what's bothering our friends up there on the rim.
They think we aim to cut up to Montana country?
Some of the wagons try it.
Lots of gold up there, ain't there, Captain?
Yep, and lots of Sioux and lots of Arapaho. It's all Indian country. Bozeman Trail's closed. Forts and posts are abandoned.
I tell you the truth, Captain. I kind of had my heart set and panning myself a fortune or two.
You wouldn't get to the first turn in that trail.
Nope, I wouldn't. I know I wouldn't. Well, had my heart set in my own plot of ground in Oregon, too.
Sure, you'll live longer.
You, going up there to the rim, Captain? Talk to them engines?
What for?
Tell them to leave us be.
That's reservation land they're on. They'll leave you be. Long as you set straight along the Oregon Trail. They haven't bothered a wagon train since the treaty.
Well, I can wait till I settle in Oregon. Then maybe drop down to the motherlode country. If I want gold bad enough.
Yeah, if you want it bad enough.
You don't have it, do you, Captain?
Have it?
The itch. The fever that sets on a man. Makes him want to find gold more than anything.
That kind of fever can get you killed, mister.
Yes, sir. I bet it can. Well, don't you worry yourself about me, Captain. Me and this little wagon train are staying right smack on the Oregon Trail.
Good. Oh, I'd watch my stock if I were you. There's alkali in these streams through here. Won't kill them, but too much will make them sick.
I'll keep an eye on them.
Well, good luck to you, mister.
Well, thanks kindly, Captain. We're sure much obliged you've rode this far with us.
It's all right. We'll watch you out of sight.
I'd like that.
Yeah, that's if you get a move on. You're wasting daylight at this rate. Valuable stuff out here, mister.
Kind of like gold, Captain?
Yeah, kind of like gold.
The Indians made no move to follow the train?
No, they left the rim of the canyon a little before we did.
You can't be sure they didn't ride on ahead to intercept the train when it was out of your sight.
They weren't headed that way, but I can't be sure.
I keep feeling like we're sitting on a powder keg, Lee. Slightest little jar will blow up to a full-scale war. It's got me edgy.
Huh. You got company.
You?
Nope. Red Cloud. Why do you think those Indians were lining the rim of that canyon?
I guess they can't believe it either. It's not much of a peace, Captain, if we spend all our time watching them, just to find out they're watching back.
Well, Major, beats killing each other.
You like Red Cloud, don't you, Lee?
Yeah, I like him.
Do you trust him?
He signed the treaty. Hasn't broken it yet.
Then you do trust him.
I don't think he'll be the one to break the treaty, if that's what you mean.
You think we will, is that it?
No, not we. But I saw something in that wagon train driver that breaks treaties. He called it a itch, a fever. Fever for gold.
You told me you warned him about going up the old Bozeman Trail.
Yeah, I warned him. I don't think he'll try it. But if he doesn't, someone with the fever will. If not the Bozeman, then they'll break new trails up into the Bighorn Range, over into Black Hills.
That's all Indian territory.
We've both read the treaty, Major.
And Red Cloud signed it. So did we. Now, what do we have to do? Read it to every wagon train that stops at Fort Laramie?
You asked me if I trusted Red Cloud. I trust him till the next white man goes into Indian country looking for gold.
Yeah, I suppose you're right.
He got what he wanted. Powder River country, Black Hills for hunting grounds.
That covers everything to the north and east of us.
And we better stay out of it.
Tell that to the men with the gold fever.
I do, when I see him.
Lee, if you were sitting in my chair, what would you do if you had to translate this problem to Washington?
I'd desert.
No, you wouldn't. You'd have a plan. What would it be?
About white men going into Indian country?
We can't protect them.
We'll have to try to keep them from going in.
That's what I want to know. Can we stop them?
We can try. Maybe with official orders we can keep them from going in numbers. If we catch them, lock them up as treaty violators.
And if they persist?
For provoking an act of war, I'd shoot them.
I said you'd have a plan.
All right. I'd start by redoubling our patrols all along the North Platte.
We don't have the manpower.
Let the infantry secure the garrison. I'll take a patrol out right now.
Oh, you just got back. You're tired.
Oh, I'm not tired.
All right, the men are tired.
I got another plan.
What's that?
I need a drink.
Why don't you go on over, Captain? Maybe I'll join you later.
Yes, sir, Major.
Why, Lee, I didn't know you were back.
Got back last night, Willa. You the barmaid here now?
Dad's waiting on some trade in the store. Here. Help yourself.
Did I say I wanted a drink?
If you'd come to see me, you'd have come last night.
It was late last night.
That sounded a lot like an explanation, Lee.
I guess I thought you wanted one.
When you see me, it's because you want to see me. That's a good thing to know.
Yeah, maybe it is.
Are you finished with this?
What's the matter? You running out of whiskey?
Almost.
Oh, not Pliny. He doesn't run out. Not when he can still get his price.
Oh, it isn't Dad. It's those men with him.
What about him?
What they're not drinking here, they're taking with them.
Huh? Where they going?
I don't know. But wherever it is, they must expect to stay a long time. Isn't 10 gallons of whiskey an awful lot, Lee?
A couple of drinks of this whiskey is an awful lot.
Say, Willa, you recollect that last shipment of boots we got in? I thought we put them in stock, but I cannot lay my hands on them.
Aren't you going to speak to Lee, Dad?
He can't see me, Willa, for the dollar signs in his eyes.
Oh, well, good afternoon to you, Captain. His glass is empty, Willa.
You offering me a drink on the house, Pliny?
On the house? Well, I just naturally suppose you were buying your drinks, Captain.
Dad.
Of course, credit is available for an old friend like you, Captain. I trust you.
That's your idea of a compliment, Pliny?
Oh, boots. That was it, wasn't it? Of course, boots. I came back here to ask about the boots.
I don't know how you could miss them. They're right next to the cash box.
Oh, my goodness, yes, of course, they must be there then. So you go right ahead, Captain. Just buy yourself another drink.
I don't know what to do about him, except love him, in spite of himself.
Well, you'll never be poor, Willem.
And dowries are still in style, Lee.
Yeah, maybe I ask for that.
Are you going to have that other drink?
No, thanks.
This one is on the house.
Oh, you don't want to break his heart, do you, Willa? No, well, I've had enough. I'll see you, huh?
Yeah, sure, Lee. Sure.
Yes, boys. Hey, you, soldier. Boys. Hey, you.
You talking to me, mister?
I called you soldier, didn't I?
This a friend of yours, Pliny?
Well, he is spending quite a lot of money, Captain.
Yeah, and I aim to spend a lot more. Maybe with you, soldier boy.
Not a good attitude to take, Will, don't you think? Raymond Burr, and you heard there two favorites, John Daner, and also Howard McNair in this episode of Fort Laramie, going back 67 years, May 20th, 1956, on Classic Radio Theater on this Friday. The news from 67 years ago today follows these important messages from your favorite radio station. Just going to take a minute here to tell you about the big savings going on now, the clearance sale at mypillow.com. And you know, I've talked about how in my office I have a pair of my slippers, and they're really comfortable, and they're on clearance right now. The mypillow.com slippers, $25 a pair, limit 10. And I would buy 3 or 4 more pairs. Unfortunately, they're out of my size. They also have sheets, pillowcases, clothing items, all on special right now. Go to mypillow.com, click on the clearance tab at the top of the page, use my promo code Wyatt, or call 1-800-928-4715. Limited sizes remaining in the MyPillow slippers, limited colors on other items. mypillow.com, clearance tab, promo code Wyatt, 1-800-928-4715. Thanks for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. We're listening to an episode of Fort Laramie starring Raymond Burr, as it was originally broadcast on Sunday, May 20th, 1956. In the newspapers of that Sunday 67 years ago, these were some of the headlines. A double crackdown threatened to halt a public feud across the U.S. Armed Services, a great dispute over how the nation should prepare to defend itself in the nuclear age. After unnamed sources, evidently within the Army, passed documents to newsmen charging that present emphasis on air power could lead only to national disaster, there were these quick developments. Secretary of Defense Wilson called the public row a most unfortunate business and said he would look into it personally. Hitting a possible action, he said the armed forces don't have to practice psychological warfare on each other. The Democrat senator for New Mexico, Chavez, the chairman of a Senate Defense Appropriations Committee, warned that Congress might cut the funds of the armed forces unless petty jealousies are done away with. Quoting, they ought to quit being prima donnas and work for our common purpose, the defense of our country. Although the Army-Air Force differences are the latest to boil over, there are hot disputes also between the Navy and Air Force. Recently, the Air Force declared the Navy's big carriers could deliver only a small strategic punch. The Navy, backed by President Eisenhower and Secretary Wilson, have pictured its aerial might as tremendous. Quick settlement of the Senate-House differences over the latest draft of an election year farm bill forecast by some House leaders. Although sharp differences of opinion still existed, they did not appear to defy compromise in time to get a bill to President Eisenhower next week. There was even a chance the House would accept a bill passed by the Senate last night without further wrangling. Leaders of France and Russia concluded a little summit conference with the prediction that the Cold War will be liquidated. They said they hoped the heads of other countries as well as their own would seek agreement on disarmament in man-to-man talks while they coordinated their efforts to the same end in the United Nations Disarmament Subcommittee. Earl Browder, once the nation's #1 Red, denounced the U.S. Communist Party as a contemptible sect with no roots in American life. He said he no longer calls himself a communist, but made it clear he hasn't changed his Marxist political views and does not plan to give government communist hunters any help in their task. A refugee Polish sailor charged in testimony made public by Senate investigators that a Polish embassy official tried to lure him back behind the Iron Curtain. He said the bait was a letter from his wife in Poland, a letter that was obviously dictated by somebody. Another refugee Polish sailor told how a mysterious visitor urged him to go home to Poland, but left in confusion when he learned the seaman was making good wages in America. Those some of the day's top news stories as reported in the newspapers of Sunday, May 20th, 1956. On your radio, Fort Laramie. The conclusion follows these important messages here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on a Saturday. On Sunday's Classic Radio Theater, we head to the fictional Madison High School and check into the English class of Our Miss Brooks, starring Eve Arden. 73 years ago, May 20th, 1950, Mr. Conklin's rare black orchid. Walter Denton has discovered uranium on his shoe. Meanwhile, someone has stolen Mr. Conklin's rare black orchid. That's coming up on Sunday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. But now the conclusion of Fort Laramie, 67 years ago, May 20th, 1956.
I got nothing to sell, mister.
Well, you could might give him some information, couldn't you, Captain? He's such a good customer.
You want to quit bobbing around in front of me?
No offense, no, not the slightest bit of offense. Excuse me.
That's better. You want a drink, soldier?
I'm in a hurry, mister.
You must know this country pretty good. I'm looking for horses. Good uns.
You're new here.
New as today.
Most of the settlers around here have horses.
I said good horses. I seen the crowbait they pass off for horses over in Laramie village. I mean good uns. Strong. Take a lot of riding. That's what I want.
Mm-hmm. How many?
Oh, 4, say.
Well, the Sutter Ranch is about your best bet. It's a good day's ride from here.
Which way?
West. Due west. You can see the ranch house from the Oregon Trail.
I ain't heading west.
Then south, near Cheyenne.
I ain't heading south.
I can't help you, mister.
You're not trying too hard, are you, soldier?
Hard enough. Pliny, you'd better get your cash customer out of my way.
Now, please, gentlemen, now, no roughhousing. This is a respectable place of business, you know.
I told you, quit bobbing in here ever so often.
I only meant to help.
You got any more shoving around you want to do, mister?
Yeah, kind of forgot my manners. Reckon you'd speak your piece better. You got paid for it.
What are you trying to buy? A cracked skull?
All right. I picked the wrong soldier. What's he so sore about?
Well, he just misunderstood you now. Here, I'll help you pick up your money.
All right, if I sit next to you, soldier.
Help yourself.
You get used to the food in time, do you?
You eating free, ain't you?
It's free enough. You look like a smart man, soldier.
I ain't.
I hear better.
You been talking to somebody dumber than me, then.
Pliny, the sutler.
He put you next to the free meal here in the barracks? That'd be Pliny. Him and me, we're dumb in different ways.
He says you know all there is to know about horses.
I've ridden them, eaten a few. That's all there is to know about them.
Where are the best horses around here, soldier?
Up in the cavalry stables.
I'd like to lay my hands on 4 good ones.
Well, now, you could try, but you might get yourself shot in trying.
I'm talking about buying horses, not stealing them.
I don't think the cavalry's got any horses for sale, mister.
Are you trying to understand me, soldier?
I'm trying harder to eat.
How much money you make a month wearing those 3 stripes of yours?
Now that just plain took my appetite.
A regular soldier makes 50 cents a day. I figure those stripes give you a bit more.
You want to raise my pay? Is that it?
I want 4 good horses. You get them for me. I'll see you get better than a raise.
You just passing through, are you, mister?
That's all. Don't worry about the money. I got it.
What are you figuring on using horses for?
Riding?
4 horses for riding.
There's 2 of us. It's hard riding. You won't get the money just asking questions, soldier.
I guess I'd have to see that money.
We're gonna do business, are we?
You got a right price, we'll do business.
This place, you'd get the horses. Can it be near the fort?
Near enough.
Ranch?
If I told you about it, you wouldn't need me. I wouldn't collect that money you're talking about.
You're not dumb, soldier. You're not dumb a bit. Hey, look here. Well, you seen the money.
Well, now, that ain't all money, mister.
How do you mean?
Some of them pouches, they just don't bulge right for silver.
You see real good, don't you?
Anybody tell you there's an assay office over in Laramie Village?
They might have, if I'd asked.
You want some advice, mister?
I want some horses.
You better not be finding gold in Indian country. There's a treaty now that says you can't go in there.
Is that a fact?
Listen, of course, you got permission from the Indians.
Soldier, I got 10 gallons of whiskey. That's a lot of permission. Providing I wanted it. Now then, I took your advice. You're gonna take my money.
I'd a lot sooner take you, mister.
You going along with me, or ain't you?
I'm going with you, all the way.
Hey, what's the ID?
You just got yourself a military escort, mister, clean through the main gate of Fort Laramie.
Well, Gorse, how'd you keep from roughing him up?
Same way you did, I guess. Pliny and Miss Willis said you went plumb white, keeping from hurting him.
Yep. One of us should have busted him. He might have stuck around to preferred charges.
Not this one. He didn't want any trouble, just horses. If I had my way, I'd have stuffed him in the stockade last night instead of throwing him off the post.
Major says you can't hold a man for what you think he's going to do.
You told him about it, then?
Mm-hmm. Last night, after you told me.
That was gold in them pouches, sure as anything. I didn't have to look inside.
Yeah, sure it was gold. And it was picks and shovels and pans he bought at the Sutlers. I got that much out of Pliny last night.
You're not forgetting the whiskey.
I'm not forgetting.
Like as not, he's got the horses by now, too.
We can't stop him from getting horses, Sergeant. We just don't have to help him. You were smart to hear him out. I should have been a little smarter.
He'd stand to talk freer to me, seeing I'd have more need of money. I had to throw him out before he worked his way any further down the wage scale.
Yeah, I knew a trooper once, deserted, sold his mount, saddle, everything up to his kerchief for $100.
It's the best part of a year's pay. You think the major will stand still for us taking off after him?
Mr. Syberts brings his patrol in tomorrow night. We're not going anywhere till he's back.
Sounds like an order.
Hey, Major Daggett's. Can't prove anything going after him, Gorse.
Cavalry patrol, maybe it'd scare him off a little.
Oh, man, that stupid doesn't scare. He'd rather be scalped than be poor.
If he goes in, we can all get scalped, trying to save his lousy hide. Sure like a better excuse to fight a war.
We all would, Sergeant.
Right about there, sir. They were following Rawhide Creek, moving north.
How many men, Mr. Syberts?
2 men. 4 horses, 4 mules. I couldn't tell enough through the glasses to describe what they looked like.
I know what one of them looked like.
We can't be sure of that, Captain. Mr. Syberts, you say you fired a signal at them. Can you be sure they heard it?
They heard it, sir. I never took the glasses off them. And when we fired, they stopped and looked at us. The whole patrol made signs for them to come back.
You think they saw you? Understood your signs?
I know they saw us. One of them had field glasses, too. Kept them trained right on us as they started moving north again.
Huh. Is that all, Lieutenant? That completes your report?
That's all, sir. Except, well, I wish I could have stopped them from going in, sir.
Well, you did all you could, Mr. Syberts.
Thank you, Captain.
Every bit you could, Lieutenant. Now go on and get some rest. That's an order.
Yes, sir. Major, sir? Captain, sir?
All right, Captain. What would you have done in his place?
exactly as he did.
Glad to hear that. But now you want to go after the prospectors.
I want permission to go to Red Cloud.
To keep them from being killed?
To keep a war from starting. The man I saw knows his chances. Everybody warned him. I got no feeling for him.
I want to think about it, Captain.
While you're thinking, a runner could be on his way to Red Cloud.
I'm aware of that.
And while you're thinking, Red Cloud could be on his way here, in paint and war bonnets.
If he is, a runner wouldn't stop him.
He might. I'd say that's a chance we got to take. The only chance we have got.
If the runner gets through and Red Cloud agrees to powwow with you, what then?
I'll ask him to let us find the prospectors and deal with them our way.
And if he's found them first?
I'll take their bodies off his hands.
How many men do you want, Captain?
Sergeant Gorse.
Just one man?
I want to stop a war, Major, and not start one. Red Cloud's not likely to consent to a full company.
The runner will leave the post in an hour. When can you and Sergeant Gorse leave?
Tell your runner we'll try hard not to get ahead of him.
That's Black Hills country ahead, ain't it, Captain?
Yeah, if you can see it, over the war bonnets.
Red Cloud's not taking any chances.
Would you, Gorse?
No, sir, I wouldn't. I just keep hoping they're getting an eyeful of this white flag I'm toting.
There in the hills, they got the best view.
We just keep riding in?
Yeah, as far as the stream. We'll drop our gun belts when we get there. And wait for Red Cloud.
Yes, sir. I guess if I'm going to die in the cavalry, I'd just soon do it with you as anybody, Captain.
You could be back at Fort Laramie, getting rich, selling horses to prospectors.
The air is cleaner out here, as long as it lasts.
The gun belt, Gorse?
Oh. How could I forget a little matter like that, you suppose?
Yeah, Red Cloud, all right.
2 braves with him. Another couple hundred in the hills.
It'll be 1,000 as long as they stay up there. You honor our flag, Red Cloud. We thank you.
Where is honor in white man for treaty boundaries?
It comes slow to some white men. I came to ask your patience, Red Cloud.
Patience stretches. In time, like an old hide, it breaks and is no more.
Since we smoked the pipe, we've handed over your renegades to let your people deal with them.
Bring white men here. You will deal with them. How?
They're alive?
I did not come here to deliver dead men.
Then they'll be put in the stockade and kept there.
You have been our friend. Tell your people Red Cloud will not powwow again. Next time, warriors not stay in hills. Next time, white men, dead white men.
I'll tell them, Red Cloud. I hope they listen.
Fort Laramie is produced and directed by Norman MacDonald and stars Raymond Burr as Lee Quince, Captain of Cavalry, with Vic Perrin as Sergeant Gorse. The script was specially written for Fort Laramie by Kathleen Height, with sound patterns by Bill James and Ray Kemper, musical supervision by Amerigo Marino. Featured in the cast were Jack Moyles and Harry Bartell, with Frank Gersel, Clayton Post, Howard McNear, Virginia Gregg, and Ralph Moody.
Company, tension! Dismissed.
Next week, another transcribed story of the Northwest frontier and the troopers who fought under Lee Quince, Captain of Cavalry.
A great Western adventure from May 20th, 1956, Fort Laramie, here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. And I ask you to visit my webpage for an important reason. That's at classicradio.stream. Stream our shows on demand. You can also find a list of places where our podcasts are available. You can also find our social media links. And you can also buy me a coffee. Now, I'm talking about Buy Me a Coffee especially right now because thanks to your contributions to Buy Me a Coffee, we have acquired a big run of Gunsmoke. And I know a lot of you love Gunsmoke. Many of you say that's your most popular program. I have put off getting these shows because the money wasn't there for them. Well, now we've acquired those Gunsmoke shows, and we'll start bringing more to you here in the weeks to come on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thank this station, support their advertisers, and tell all your friends the greatest radio shows of all time are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, right here on your favorite radio station.